here, and along with Sunny. And tonight we're going to look at Silent Night, Bloody Night, a film that most people probably have seen by now. It was for a while a fairly unknown film, but since it's in the public domain, a lot of people show it on their shows or talk about it on their YouTube channels. And excuse me. I swear, every time I start the film, my nose starts to itch. I don't get it. Anyway, it's from 1972. Sort of what you would, I guess, call a proto-slasher, as it's not a slasher in the traditional sense that came about in the late 70s to early 80s. It's got more in common with like the Italian giallo that was being made at the time, you know, killer with black gloved hands and things. And got a very good cast. Headlining it is Patrick O'Neill, very popular actor. Did a lot of TV and film work. And we also have Mary Woronov. She's, of course, a cult favorite from such films as Death Race 2000, Rock and Roll High School, and Eating Raoul. The other main character is James Patterson. He was mostly a TV actor, and this sadly was his last role. He died of cancer only a couple of months after principal filming had ended. And in fact, that's not even his voice we hear in this film. It's been dubbed because he had died and wasn't available for the looping of dialogue. But the biggest name for us horror fans is John Carradine, who has a sadly small role as a deaf mute. Who casts Carradine in a film and doesn't have him speak any dialogue? That's crazy. But anyway, the film opens with some narration by Mary Woronow's character. And she talks about how Wilford Butler, man, my memory these days, died tragically. Kudos to that stuntman. That's a heck of a burn stunt. But in keeping with the tradition of holiday horror films, this of course happened on Christmas. His will leaves the house to his grandson Jeffrey and is told to keep it as is. 21 years pass, and news arrives that Jeffrey wants to sell. And this news reaches an asylum, and someone at the asylum's not happy about it. Looks like we've got our killer introduced. Okay. But we haven't got time for that right now, because we're meeting the lawyer, John Carter, and his secretary / Mistress Ingrid. They show up to finalize the deal for the house. And Carter meets with the town council, who are basically the ones wanting to buy the house.
Let me introduce you. This is Charlie Toman, who publishes our weekly newspaper, The Patriot.
Mr. Toman?
And this is Tess Howard.
How do you do?
She operates our switchboard.
Oh, really?
We call her the communications director. And this is Bill Mason,
Mason?
our sheriff.
Pay attention. Those names will become important later. Well, after the introductions are done, sorry. After your introductions are done, what is your problem? Oh, okay. She wants to get to the action. After your introductions are done, Mr. Carter tells them the amount that the seller wants.
He's willing to sacrifice the house for $50,000 in cash by noon tomorrow.
Not a bad chunk of change for the 70s. Of course, that's an old, big house. Probably worth a lot more. But Jeffrey kind of needs the money in a hurry. Hence, cash. Well, the council is not sure how to get that much money that quickly. Then they come up with the idea. Maybe they can borrow it from the bank in the bigger town down the way. So the mayor, that was the mayor who introduced them all, the mayor heads out to get the money. Meanwhile, the killer has arrived at the house and gone inside. Jeffrey, his car is broken down and he tries to flag down a ride, but nobody wants to stop for him. Because, you know, it's been reported there's a crazy man out there who escaped from an asylum. So he's going to have to walk to the house. And we get a lot of footage of O'Neill and the mistress exploring the town, what there is of it. Him calling his wife to let her know that he's got a birthday present for the daughter, or Christmas present for the daughter. You know, good dad, kinda. And the makeshift dinner that Ingrid makes for him before they head on up to the bedroom, where unfortunately things get interrupted by an axe. Looks like somebody's blocking somebody's view. Anyways, it's a pretty gruesome scene. Very gory. Even by today's standards, it's pretty gnarly. After they're dead, the killer calls the sheriff. And did I mention this is the Butler house that they decided to stay in? Ow, stop. I got my own little killer here. The killer calls the sheriff, pretending to be Carter, to lure him out to the house. He then calls Tess and tells her that, in a whisper, that the killer is Mary Ann. Well, don't knock stuff over then. Is Mary Ann. And this upsets her greatly. And she is also lured to the house. First, though, the sheriff gets waylaid at the local cemetery. A shovel is just as good as an axe when you need it. Oh, and As for why he was wearing sunglasses in the middle of the night, that'll become apparent later. Meanwhile, Jeffrey has finally made it to the house, but he can't get in. The lawyer had the keys. But the lawyer's car's there, and the keys are in the car. So he borrows it and goes to see the mayor. He can't find anyone at the police station, so he goes to the mayor. And he meets the mayor's daughter. And it is a meet cute as only the 70s could do.
It's open. Okay, mister, that's far enough. What do you want here?
Mayor,
Try again. My father's not home. And don't move.
you want me to put my hands up?
No. Just stay there.
Didn't I tell you it was a meet cute? Well, after he established his identity as Jeffrey Butler, and she introduces herself as the mayor's daughter, Diane, they talk and decide that maybe they should go out to the house. He is, after all, a single, fairly attractive man who's going to be getting $50,000 soon. Could be a catch. But they get out to the only as far as the cemetery when they see the sheriff's car, and we learn the importance of those sunglasses.
Someone left their sunglasses in the snow.
They're the sheriff's.
My lawyer's missing. So is the sheriff. You've got strange phone calls. And now someone's fascinated by my grandfather's grave.
That's for anyone who came in late, I guess. Deciding this is information that needs to be told to someone, and sheriff's not available, they rush back to town and talk to Tolman. And they decide that Jeffrey and Tobin will go to Tess because they can't get a hold of her. And Diane will stay at the office in case somebody calls. While at the office, she makes some interesting discoveries by going down through the old papers. Basically, the name Marianne is the name of Jeffrey's mother. And the Butler house back in the 30s was an asylum. And Marianne was one of the patients. Meanwhile, Tobin and Jeffrey arrive at Tess's, where they can't find her. And then Jeffrey lets loose some information that causes Tobin to act strange. Well, strange even for Carradine.
Maybe she went to see the woman who's there. Someone called the mayor's house before. Said she'd be waiting. What is it?
Yeah, he just drove off and left him there. Well, Jeffrey does an odd thing. He kills one of the birds before he leaves. Anyway, he walks back to the newspaper office where Diane informs him of the what had happened to the house back in the 30s. And Jeffrey is a little upset to realize that his father, who he had never known, was an unknown rapist who raped his mother. And that's how she ended up in the asylum, from the trauma. Not something very happy to learn on Christmas. But with all this going on, he decides it's time they headed to the house themselves. Meanwhile, Tess has arrived at the house.
Don't be afraid. I want to help you. Take my hand. Take it, Tess.
Nasty. Ugh. Well, as luck would have it, our intrepid duo run into Toman.
Jeff, look!
Yes, literally ran into Toman. Okay, it was a bad joke. Anyhow, they finally get to the house. Unbeknownst to them, the mayor has returned to his home, where the phone has been ringing. And answering it, the caller identifies themselves as Mary Ann and tells the mayor that his daughter is at the house. Well, he grabs a rifle and heads on over. Meanwhile, Jeffrey has got into the house. It's now open. Diane stayed in the car. She's not too sure she trusts him now because he hit Toman. Oh, I forgot to mention, when Jeff went to see if Toman was alive, he found that someone had lopped off his hands. Malicious, this killer. Well, while looking around the house, he finds his grandfather's diary. And we are treated to sepia tone flashbacks as Jeffrey learns that the reason his mother went insane wasn't just that she had been sexually assaulted. It was who had sexually assaulted her. After her mother had died, her father, you get the picture. Just like in Hack-A-Lantern, the grandfather is also the father. And feeling remorse, he opened the house up as an asylum, hiring a lot of doctors, and they brought in other patients. And as time went on, he began to suspect they weren't really going to help his daughter or the other patients. In fact, they were rather abusive to the patients. And he was being strung along by the doctors so that they could sponge off his money. And he had had enough. So in 1935, he decided to take his daughter away and as a diversion released all the other patients, which led to a tragedy. Worst Christmas party ever. Oh, okay. I'll stop. Anyways, Jeff then changes into a tuxedo-ish outfit with a cape. Diane finally comes inside where he tells her about how his mother died and that the inmates killed her. during the confusion of the massacre. Also, the inmates had scattered afterwards, but 4 of them fingers don't work too well. 4 of them stayed and became members of the community, the 4 council members, including her father. And then in another shock, the man who died in 1950 was not Wolford Butler. It was a tramp who had been homesteading there, squatting basically. And Butler had been traveling around, and he found him, and killed him to make it look like he had died. And then Butler's revenge becomes complete when Diane's father arrives. And then Butler, who, remember, is crazy, reveals himself and keeps calling Diane Mary Ann. But being a final girl, as they say, she's not to be taken so easily.
Please. Please.
She is not to be trifled with. Well, at this point, the narration that Woronov had started at the beginning comes to an end. A year has passed, and she's having the house torn down. And thus the film ends on a rather melancholy note. It was a pretty good horror flick, especially for the time. What's the plane doing this time of night? I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a plane coming by. We're fairly near the airport, so we get that all occasionally. Where was I? Oh, yes. I really enjoyed this. It is a really good Christmas set. Not exactly themed, but set. Horror film. Everything important happens on Christmas. The opening of the man who got burned to death happened on Christmas. The main setting of most of the action in the film is on Christmas Eve, basically. And the massacre that happened was on Christmas, at a Christmas party. And really good cast. Patrick O'Neill, always good to see him. He probably most familiar to a lot of people these days as the captain of the ship on the Steven Seagal movie Under Siege. But, I mean, he had a very prolific career. I mean, he was in films like In Harm's Way, and he was on episodes of Columbo, once as a killer and once as a TV exec who is the killer's boss, but doesn't get killed. That was someone else in that episode. And, yeah, he's very well-liked actor. The film does have a bit of a Hitchcockian twist because of Psycho, where you follow O'Neill's character, and we do follow him. We get to learn, I mean, a good third of the film is him. And then he gets killed. And really like Mary Woronov in this film. She was a bit of an underrated actress, I think. This was an early role for her. She was fairly young. I think she had just left Andy Warhol's factory. I believe she at this time. And then, of course, she would go on to all those great cult films. And she still acts today. I mean, she was in House of the Devil for Ty West, as well as a few other films. She's a good actress, always value for the money. And, of course, James Patterson, sad that he passed away so soon after this. I think he would have been a pretty, not maybe a massive star, but I think he would have been a star through the 70s, along the likes of like John Saxon or can't think of anybody, but come on, Saxon. But yeah, he was very good. I don't quite understand that part at the end where he changes into the kind of opera outfit, but they've been showing throughout the film he was a little off to begin with. So, and had a bit of a temper problem. When he can't get anyone to stop for him, he smashes his own car up. But yeah, very well paced thriller. It takes a while to get into the action, but a little repetitive. Has, you know, almost comedically every time the two characters, Diane and Jeffrey, try to get out to that house, something comes up to stop them, and then they have to go back into town, and then they go back out again. And of course, that final shootout is kind of darkly comic, the way that worked out. But excellent film. It should have been a big hit, but low budget company, can't always get good releasing, and but it's more recognized now for the more of a cult classic than an actual classic. But I think it is a very well made and very suspenseful thriller that more people should see. You know, if you're tired of Santa Claus Conquers the Martians or Silent Night, Deadly Night, you should give this one a try. Please hit like, share, and subscribe, and stay after for my favorite scene.